There are people in this world who experience life differently. While others move through conversations, relationships, and environments without noticing the emotional undercurrents around them, the empath senses everything. They feel tension in a room before a single word is spoken. They notice the sadness hidden behind a smile. They recognize the silent battles people try so hard to conceal. This ability often goes unnoticed by the outside world, yet it shapes the empath's entire existence. The empath's strength is rarely loud or obvious. It does not seek attention or admiration. Instead, it exists quietly beneath the surface, guiding their reactions, decisions, and understanding of others. While many people believe strength comes from dominance, control, or emotional detachment, the empath carries a different form of power, the ability to feel deeply while still remaining compassionate. From a young age, many empaths realize they are different. They absorb the emotional atmosphere around them like a sponge. When someone is hurting, the empath feels it almost as if it were their own pain. When someone is joyful, that happiness spreads through them effortlessly. Because of this sensitivity, they often become the ones people turn to for comfort, guidance, or understanding. However, the world does not always recognize this as strength. In many cases, society praises toughness and emotional distance. Those who care deeply are sometimes labeled as too sensitive, too emotional, or too vulnerable. These judgments can cause empaths to question themselves. They begin to wonder if their emotional awareness is a weakness that must be hidden or suppressed. Yet, the very quality that others misunderstand is what gives the empath their silent strength. Their ability to feel allows them to understand people on a level that goes far beyond surface conversations. They notice subtle shifts in tone, body language, and energy. They recognize when someone says they are fine, but internally feels broken. This awareness creates a form of emotional intelligence that cannot be easily taught or imitated. Because of this deep perception, the empath often becomes a source of stability for others. People naturally gravitate toward those who make them feel seen and understood. Without trying to attract attention, the empath becomes the quiet anchor in many relationships. Friends, family members, and even strangers feel comfortable opening their hearts in their presence. This silent role requires immense emotional resilience. Carrying the feelings of others can be exhausting, especially when the empath struggles to separate their own emotions from the emotions they absorb. There are moments when the weight of this awareness feels overwhelming. The empath may retreat into solitude simply to regain balance and reconnect with their own inner state. Yet even in those moments of exhaustion, the empath continues to care. Their compassion does not disappear simply because it has been challenged. Instead, it deepens their understanding of human vulnerability. They realize that everyone is navigating invisible struggles, and this realization strengthens their patience and empathy even further. The silent strength of the empath also lies in their ability to forgive and understand. While others may react quickly with anger or judgment, the empath often searches for the deeper reasons behind someone's behavior. They recognize that pain often hides behind hostility, and insecurity often hides behind arrogance. This perspective allows them to respond with calmness rather than conflict. This does not mean the empath is weak or easily controlled. Their quiet nature can sometimes create that illusion, but beneath their calm exterior lies a profound inner awareness. They observe, analyze, and reflect in ways that many people never consider. Over time, this self-reflection develops into wisdom. The empath learns that their sensitivity is not something to escape from, but something to understand and protect. They begin to recognize the importance of emotional boundaries, realizing that caring for others does not mean sacrificing their own well-being. Through this realization, their quiet compassion transforms into balanced strength. Unlike loud displays of power, the empath's strength rarely demands recognition. It operates in subtle ways, through patience during conflict, through understanding when others judge, through kindness when the world becomes harsh. This quiet resilience allows them to remain connected to their humanity even when others become detached. The empath continues to listen when others stop listening. They continue to care when others become indifferent. They continue to understand when others choose judgment. Pain is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life. Most people spend their lives trying to escape it, avoid it, or bury it beneath distractions. They see pain as an enemy, something that must be eliminated as quickly as possible. Yet beneath the surface of every painful experience lies something far more complex. Pain often carries lessons that comfort and ease could never teach. For the empath, this truth becomes especially clear because they feel emotions so deeply. Painful experiences rarely pass through them without leaving a lasting imprint. Betrayal cuts deeper, rejection feels heavier, and disappointment lingers longer. At times it may seem unfair that someone who tries so hard to care for others must endure such intense emotional storms. But pain has a strange way of revealing truths that comfort hides. When everything in life feels smooth and predictable, people rarely question their choices or the people around them. They move forward without examining the deeper patterns shaping their lives. Pain interrupts that illusion. It forces a moment of reflection, a pause where the mind begins to ask difficult questions. Why did this happen? What did I ignore? What must change? These questions mark the beginning of transformation. Pain breaks the surface of normal routines and pushes the individual into deeper awareness. It exposes illusions, reveals hidden motives, and uncovers emotional patterns that once went unnoticed. For empaths, pain often arrives through relationships. Their natural compassion attracts many types of people, including those who are wounded, confused, or emotionally manipulative. At first, the empath may try to heal these individuals, believing that enough patience, love, or understanding will eventually bring harmony. But repeated disappointment slowly reveals an important truth. Not everyone who receives kindness values it. This realization can feel devastating at first. The empath may begin to question their own judgment, wondering how they could have trusted the wrong people for so long. Yet this painful awareness is not a punishment. It is a lesson that strengthens their ability to see clearly. Pain begins to sharpen perception. What once seemed normal begins to feel uncomfortable. The empath starts noticing behaviors they once excused or ignored. They recognize subtle manipulation, emotional dishonesty, and patterns of selfishness that previously escaped their attention. Through these realizations, pain becomes a teacher of boundaries. The empath starts understanding that compassion does not require endless sacrifice. They learn that caring for someone does not mean tolerating disrespect or emotional harm. This awareness slowly reshapes the way they approach relationships and personal energy. Pain also teaches patience with oneself. During difficult moments, the mind often searches for someone to blame. Sometimes that blame turns inward. The empath may criticize themselves for being too trusting or too forgiving. Yet the deeper lesson of pain is not self-punishment, but self-understanding. Every painful experience adds a layer of emotional wisdom. Each disappointment reveals something about human nature. Each heartbreak clarifies what the heart truly needs. Each moment of struggle pushes the empath to understand their own values more clearly. Over time, this process creates a quiet strength. The empath, who once believed everyone deserved unlimited access to their kindness, begins to see the importance of discernment. They recognize that emotional energy is valuable and must be shared carefully. Pain also deepens empathy itself. Those who have suffered often develop a more profound understanding of others' struggles. Instead of offering shallow advice or empty comfort, they can connect with genuine compassion because they know what it means to face emotional darkness. This kind of understanding cannot be taught through books or theories. It is learned only through lived experience. The hidden teacher within pain slowly reshapes the empath's inner world. What once felt like pure suffering begins to reveal patterns of growth. The moments that once seemed like emotional defeat become turning points in self-awareness. Pain teaches the empath to listen more closely to intuition. It encourages them to trust the subtle signals that warn of imbalance or dishonesty. It pushes them to examine their own emotional needs instead of ignoring them in order to please others. With each lesson, the empath becomes more grounded in their identity. They begin to recognize the difference between compassion and self-neglect. They start to understand that true kindness includes respect for one's own emotional limits. What once felt like wounds slowly transform into sources of clarity. The empath begins to see how every difficult moment carried a message about self-worth, awareness, and personal strength. Through pain, illusions dissolve. Through pain, awareness expands. Through pain, the empath learns to see the world with deeper understanding. For a long time, many empaths move through life believing that their value lies in how much they can give to others. They listen when others need comfort. They offer support when someone feels lost. They forgive when others make mistakes. Their kindness becomes a constant presence in the lives of those around them. Yet in the quiet moments, when the world becomes still, the empath sometimes feels something difficult to explain. Despite giving so much, they may feel unseen or unappreciated. The people they help may not always return the same care. Their understanding may be taken for granted, and their patience may be mistaken for weakness. This is often where the journey towards self-worth begins. At first, the empath may struggle to understand why they feel this emptiness. After all, they have done everything they believed was right. They have offered compassion, loyalty, and forgiveness. But the deeper realization slowly begins to form. Giving endlessly without recognition of one's own value creates imbalance. Self-worth does not awaken in a single moment. It unfolds gradually through experience, reflection, and sometimes painful realization. It begins when the empath starts questioning the patterns that have shaped their relationships. Why do they always become the one who listens but is rarely heard? Why do they forgive repeatedly, while others never change? Why do they feel responsible for everyone's emotions except their own? These questions are not signs of selfishness. They are the beginning of self-awareness. For many empaths, the habit of putting others first was formed long ago. They learned to create harmony by avoiding conflict, by understanding everyone's perspective, and by offering support whenever it was needed. Over time, this behavior became automatic, yet constantly placing others at the center can slowly erase one's own sense of importance. The empath become so focused on healing others that they forget their own emotional needs deserve the same attention. The awakening of self-worth begins when the empath notices this imbalance. Perhaps it happens after repeated disappointment in a relationship. Perhaps it comes after realizing that certain people only appear when they need something. Or perhaps it arises from the quiet understanding that their kindness has been given to those who never truly respected it. In that moment of clarity, something shifts inside. The empath begins to recognize that their compassion is valuable. The ability to understand others, to offer patience, and to care deeply is not something ordinary. It is a rare emotional strength that deserves appreciation and respect. This realization changes the way the empath sees themselves. Instead of measuring their worth by how much they sacrifice, they begin to see their presence as meaningful in its own right. Their kindness is no longer something to be handed out endlessly without thought. It becomes something precious that must be shared with those who truly value it. With this awareness comes the courage to set boundaries. For someone who has always prioritized others, boundaries may initially feel uncomfortable. Saying no may feel unfamiliar. Choosing personal peace over pleasing someone else may create moments of doubt. But these small acts are powerful steps towards self-respect. Each time the empath protects their emotional energy, they reinforce a new understanding of their value. They begin to see that respect from others often follows the respect they show themselves. Self-worth also brings a deeper sense of independence. The empath no longer searches constantly for validation or approval. They understand that their identity is not defined by how useful they are to others, but by the authenticity of who they are. This shift creates a new kind of confidence. It is not loud or boastful. It does not seek to dominate or impress. Instead, it appears as quiet certainty. A calm awareness that one's emotions, thoughts, and boundaries deserve recognition. People often notice this change even before the empath speaks about it. The same person who once tolerated endless demands now carries a sense of calm self-respect. The same voice that once hesitated to express needs now speaks with gentle clarity. The awakening of self-worth does not erase compassion. The empath still cares deeply about others and still understands emotional complexity. But their kindness now exists alongside self-awareness rather than self-neglect. They begin to choose relationships that feel balanced rather than draining. They spend time with those who appreciate their presence rather than exploit their patience. Their emotional energy flows toward people who reciprocate respect and sincerity. Gradually, the empath realizes something important. Their value was never dependent on how much they could endure, how much they could forgive, or how much they could sacrifice. Their value existed long before anyone recognized it. For many empaths, the desire to help others feels natural and almost automatic. When someone is struggling, they listen. When someone feels lost, they try to guide them. When someone is hurting, they offer comfort without hesitation. Their instinct is to bring peace, understanding, and healing wherever they go. But over time, something begins to happen beneath the surface. The empath starts to feel emotionally drained. They notice that certain relationships leave them exhausted instead of fulfilled. Some people only appear when they need advice, support, or emotional reassurance. Once their problems are solved, they disappear until the next crisis arrives. At first, the empath may ignore these patterns. They may tell themselves that helping others is simply part of who they are. They may believe that patience and kindness will eventually inspire the same behavior in others. Yet as the cycle repeats, a quiet realization begins to form. Kindness without boundaries invites imbalance. Without realizing it, the empath may have allowed others unlimited access to their emotional energy. They may have listened for hours while no one ever asked how they were feeling. They may have forgiven repeated mistakes without seeing any real change. They may have given their time and understanding to people who never truly valued it. This is often the moment when transformation begins. The empath slowly recognizes that boundaries are not acts of rejection or hostility. Instead, they are acts of self-respect. A boundary simply defines where one person's emotional responsibility ends and another person's begins. For someone who has always prioritized harmony, learning this lesson can feel uncomfortable. Setting boundaries may initially create feelings of guilt. The empath may worry that they are being selfish or unkind. They may fear disappointing others or creating conflict. But the deeper truth reveals something very different. Healthy boundaries protect both compassion and emotional balance. When an empath never sets limits, their kindness becomes vulnerable to exploitation. People who lack self-awareness may begin to rely on the empath's patience without ever examining their own behavior. The empath becomes the emotional support system for everyone else while quietly neglecting their own needs. Transformation begins when the empath decides that their emotional well-being matters too. This decision does not require anger or confrontation. Often, it appears through small but powerful changes. The empath begins to say no when something feels overwhelming. They stop answering every call for help when they are already exhausted. They allow others to solve their own problems instead of always stepping in to fix them. These actions may seem simple, but they carry profound psychological impact. When the empath creates boundaries, they begin reclaiming their emotional space. Instead of constantly reacting to other people's needs, they start listening to their own intuition. They learn to recognize when a situation feels supportive and when it feels draining. Over time, the empath also notices something surprising. Some relationships naturally become healthier once boundaries exist. People who truly care will respect the empath's limits and adapt accordingly. These individuals value the relationship itself, not just the comfort it provides. Other relationships, however, may begin to fade. Those who relied on the empath's endless patience may react with confusion or frustration. They may question the change or attempt to push past the new limits. Yet this reaction often reveals an important truth about the nature of the relationship. Boundaries expose intentions. When someone respects the empath's need for balance, it strengthens trust. When someone resists those limits, it reveals that they were more interested in control than connection. Through this process, the empath's life gradually becomes clearer and more balanced. Emotional energy that was once scattered across countless obligations begins returning to its rightful source. The empath has more time for reflection, creativity, and personal growth. Their compassion does not disappear. In fact, it becomes more meaningful. Instead of offering help from a place of exhaustion, the empath now gives support from a place of genuine willingness. Their kindness becomes intentional rather than automatic. They choose when and where to invest their emotional energy. This transformation also strengthens the empath's sense of identity. They no longer feel responsible for solving every problem or absorbing every emotion in the room. They understand that caring for others does not require sacrificing their own stability. With boundaries in place, the empath becomes both compassionate and resilient. Their sensitivity remains intact, but it is protected by awareness and self-respect. The emotional chaos that once surrounded them begins to fade. Their inner world grows quieter and more balanced. Their presence becomes calm rather than overwhelmed. There comes a moment in the life of an empath when everything begins to shift. After years of giving, understanding, forgiving, and carrying emotional weight for others, something inside them quietly awakens. It is not a loud or dramatic change. It begins as a subtle realization that they can no longer continue living the way they once did. For a long time, the empath believed their role was to heal, to support, and to understand everyone around them. They tolerated behaviors that others would never accept. They overlooked disrespect because they saw the pain behind it. They stayed in situations far longer than they should have because they believed their patience could bring transformation. But eventually, experience teaches a deeper truth. Not every person who receives kindness intends to honor it. This realization is often the turning point that begins the empath's greatest transformation. The emotional exhaustion they once felt slowly becomes clarity. The confusion that once clouded their decisions begins to fade. They start seeing patterns that were always there, but were previously hidden by compassion. The empath recognizes how often they ignored their intuition. They remember the small inner warnings they dismissed because they wanted to believe the best in others. They see how many times their kindness was mistaken for weakness. Yet instead of becoming bitter, the empath evolves. The great comeback of the empath is not about revenge or proving others wrong. It is about reclaiming the parts of themselves that were slowly neglected. It is about recognizing that their emotional depth is not something to hide, but something to protect and honor. As this transformation unfolds, the empath begins to rebuild their relationship with themselves. They start listening to their inner voice more carefully. When something feels wrong, they no longer silence that instinct. They trust the quiet awareness that has always guided them. Instead of sacrificing their peace for the comfort of others, they begin choosing environments and relationships that respect their emotional nature. This shift changes everything. The empath who once gave endlessly now gives with intention. Their compassion becomes focused rather than scattered. They offer support where it is valued and withdraw from situations that drain their spirit. With each step, their confidence grows. This confidence is not loud or aggressive. It is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted in self-awareness. The empath no longer feels the need to explain their boundaries or justify their choices. They simply understand their worth in a way they never did before. People around them begin to notice the difference. The person who once tolerated endless emotional demands now carries a calm sense of self-respect. The individual who once tried to fix every conflict now understands that not every battle belongs to them. Their presence becomes peaceful rather than overwhelmed. Some people may feel inspired by this change. They see the empath's strength and begin to respect them in new ways. Others may feel uncomfortable, especially those who once benefited from the empath's endless patience. But the empath no longer fears these reactions. They understand that growth naturally changes the dynamics of relationships. Some connections deepen with mutual respect, while others quietly dissolve because they were never balanced to begin with. Through this process, the empath begins experiencing life with greater clarity. Their emotional awareness, which once felt like a burden, now becomes a powerful guide. They recognize sincerity quickly and sense dishonesty just as easily. This awareness protects them from repeating the same painful patterns. The empath's comeback is not built on force or domination. It grows from wisdom, reflection, and the courage to live authentically. The same heart that once made them vulnerable now becomes the source of their greatest strength. They are still compassionate, still capable of deep understanding, and still able to connect with others on a profound level. But their kindness is no longer given without thought or protection. It flows with purpose. Their life begins to align with their true nature rather than the expectations others placed upon them. Opportunities appear that resonate with their values. Relationships become more genuine and supportive. The empath, who once felt emotionally scattered, now feels grounded. They understand that their sensitivity was never the problem. The problem was believing that everyone deserved unlimited access to that sensitivity. With this awareness, their energy returns to them. Their creativity expands. Their intuition sharpens. Their presence becomes stronger and more peaceful at the same time. The empath, who once felt overlooked, now walks forward with quiet certainty. Their comeback has already begun.